Have you ever wondered what makes Elon Musk so different? Why he seems to think 10 steps ahead of everyone else, while at the same time being blunt in interviews or chaotic on social media? Some people call him a genius. Others call him eccentric. But behind the innovation, controversy, and headlines, there's a fascinating question. Is Elon Musk the ultimate example of an INTJ personality? In this video, we're going to break down Musk's behavior, decisions, and mindset to see if he truly fits into the rare mastermind category known as INTJ, and what that means for you if you share these traits. By the end, you'll know the specific patterns that point to INTJ, how those play out in real life, and how to use them to your advantage without the drama. Elon Musk is one of the most polarizing figures of our time. He's the man behind Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the rebranding of Twitter into X. He talks about colonizing Mars, building AI that benefits humanity, and powering the world with sustainable energy. That scope alone screams long-range strategic thinking. But it isn't just the size of his goals that's interesting, it's the way he pursues them. INTJs are rare, about 2% of the population, and they're known for laser-focused vision, pattern recognition, and a refusal to accept, "That's how it's always been done." Watch how Musk behaves when he's told something can't be done. That's when he leans in. He'll ask, "Okay, what are the constraints? Which of these are real and which are just habits?" That's a classic INTJ move. Deconstruct the dogma, keep the physics, discard the tradition. The visionary mindset is the first major tell. Long before sleek electric cars were status symbols, Tesla was struggling to survive with a sports car that broke often and cost too much. Most leaders would have settled for selling a few thousand units and calling it a day. Musk saw a ladder. Start with an expensive, exciting car to shift perception, use those profits to build a more affordable sedan, then scale into mass-market vehicles powered by a global charging network. That's not just a business plan. It's a multi-step endgame designed backward from a desired future. He did the same with SpaceX. For decades, rockets were single-use fireworks. SpaceX made reusability a non-negotiable because the end state, routine, affordable space travel required it. The first few landings failed publicly, spectacularly, and repeatedly. An INTJ doesn't stop at embarrassment. They treat it like data. Failures aren't fatal. They're feedback loops. You can see that logic in his comments about physics being the law, everything else is a recommendation. He frames the future first, then works backward to the present in cold, methodical steps. Strategic problem-solving is the next hallmark. When Tesla hit what he called production hell with the Model 3, Musk didn't retreat to a boardroom to write memos. He slept on a couch in the factory, walked the line, and personally traced bottlenecks. That wasn't theatrics, it was diagnostic. INTJs like to touch the system themselves, look for the constraint that sets the throughput for the entire process, and fix that instead of swatting symptoms. He publicly admitted he over-automated parts of the factory, then ripped out robots and simplified steps when he realized human hands were faster for certain tasks. That's first principles thinking in motion. Define the goal, isolate the bottleneck, refactor the system. He'll even vertically integrate unpopular tasks, like building seats in-house, if external partners can't meet the efficiency target. For an INTJ, inefficiency is not just annoying, it's offensive. They experience wasted motion as moral friction and will burn hours now to save minutes forever. If you're an INTJ watching this, you probably relate. You'd rather endure a brutal week redesigning a workflow than tolerate daily chaos for the next year. Then there's the way he communicates, introverted but direct. Many people think introversion equals shyness, but for INTJs, it's more about internal processing. Musk often pauses, looks away mid-sentence, and chooses unusual phrasing because his brain is silently scanning possibilities and selecting the most precise option. He can come off as abrupt or overly literal. In interviews, he sometimes seems bored by small talk and lights up only when the conversation shifts to hard constraints, math or timelines. On social media, he'll drop a curt yes, no, or a blunt correction without preamble. That minimalism isn't a lack of care, it's an efficiency bias. INTJs value accuracy over harmony. They'd rather be correct than be liked, and they accept the social cost. That style can trigger friction, especially online, where tone doesn't carry.
But it's the same trait that lets them make uncomfortable decisions quickly. Cut a feature, cancel a partnership, change a plan.
If you've ever typed a message and deleted the polite filler because it felt wasteful, you've tasted this INTJ economy of words. That same economy shows up in the lone wolf mentality. Musk's companies are often described as intense, with high-pressure deadlines and an expectation that people will stretch beyond their current limits. He's praised as inspiring and criticized as demanding, sometimes in the same sentence. INTJs tend to assume competence by default and design plans that depend on it. When reality doesn't match, they don't lower the bar, they push the people. It's not personal, at least not to them. In their mind, the mission is impersonal and urgent, and everyone, including themselves, is a resource aligned to that mission. This can make them polarizing leaders. The loyal core thrives, others burn out. You see the same pattern in Musk's own work habits. When something critical breaks, he zeroes in, ignores everything else, and absorbs technical details far below the CEO level. He hires lieutenants who can operate independently, but he'll drop down into the code, the wiring harness, or the launch checklist if that's the current choke point. It's less about control for its own sake and more about the INTJ instinct to personally resolve the highest leverage variable. Future orientation is another huge indicator. Most people consider next quarter, maybe next year. INTJs build 10 and 20-year maps and then compress time by forcing today's decisions to serve that map. Musk talks about making humanity a multi-planetary species, as if it's a long overdue safety feature, the way you'd talk about installing smoke detectors. He doesn't frame it as a moonshot, he frames it as risk mitigation. Electric vehicles? That's not a trendy product. It's a node in a global energy system that includes solar, grid storage, and software orchestration. AI? He talks about alignment, not because it's fashionable, but because he thinks it's an existential variable that must be bent early, while it's still malleable. The boring company may look like a side quest, but in a systems view, it's a constraint argument. Cities choke on surface friction. Add a new dimension for movement, reduce that friction. Whether you agree with his solutions or not, the thinking pattern is consistent. Define the long horizon clearly, name the bottlenecks, and attack them across multiple fronts. That coherence across domains, cars, rockets, energy, AI, tunnels, is very INTJ. They don't dabble, they architect. Risk-taking with purpose is another signature. Musk famously put his own money on the line more than once, including during a brutal period when Tesla and SpaceX were both close to failure. That wasn't random gambling, it was calculated asymmetry. INTJs will accept short-term pain, public skepticism, and even ridicule if the expected value of the long-term outcome is high enough. They don't mind being the only person who believes in the plan, at least not for a while. They'll tolerate a decade of being misunderstood if it means the last chapter makes sense. That's why, when a launch explodes or a production line stalls, an INTJ won't call it a day, they'll iterate. The sunk cost fallacy doesn't tempt them because they're not worshipping the past, they're optimizing toward the end state. If step 5 fails but step 6 still matters, they rewrite step 5. Their ego is not attached to the method, it's attached to the outcome. Of course, the dark side of the INTJ is very real, and Musk exhibits those shadows too. The same certainty that fuels bold bets can harden into stubbornness. When an INTJ believes they've found the correct model, they can become dismissive of dissent. That can lead to unrealistic timelines, friction with regulators, or public spats that distract from the mission. The blunt, minimalist communication that cuts through noise can also cut people. An INTJ under stress might skip empathy entirely, issuing orders that land like ultimatums. It's not that they lack feeling, it's that they've put feeling in the back seat while driving at 200 miles per hour toward a milestone. That trade, speed for sensitivity, works until it doesn't. You'll hear former staff say the pressure was exhilarating and unsustainable. Both can be true. If you're an INTJ, the lesson isn't to soften your standards, it's to add buffers, trusted peers who can challenge assumptions, realistic buffers on timelines, and deliberate moments to explain the why so your team sees the meaning behind the push. There's also the paradox of connection. INTJs crave deep, meaningful relationships, but their schedules, intensity, and selective communication style can starve those relationships. Musk has spoken about loneliness and personal struggle, at times even while commanding global attention. That's the INTJ contradiction. They can move millions of people with an idea but still feel misunderstood at dinner. The fix isn't to fake small talk, it's to apply the same first principles discipline to relationships. Schedule presence the way you schedule launches. Treat listening as a design constraint. Explain your internal map so others don't have to guess at your motives. When you do that, your intensity becomes contagious instead of confusing. Another INTJ tell is the habit of reframing impossible into inefficient. When a problem seems too big, Musk doesn't argue feelings, he decomposes it. Take range anxiety for EVs. Instead of debating fear, he multiplied variables: larger battery capacity, better power electronics, aerodynamic design, and a proprietary fast charging network. Each improvement shifts the curve. None of those moves were glamorous on their own, but together they changed the equation. That's a classic INTJ approach. Layer multiple small structural changes to produce a large emergent effect. If you're wired like this, you've probably done it in your own life. Rearranged your workspace, automated routine tasks, built templates, or learned keyboard shortcuts until your day magically became less chaotic. It's not magic, it's systems design. Even the public controversies fit the INTJ pattern when you zoom out. The confident, sometimes caustic tweets, the terse emails that leak and scare people, the head-on collisions with institutions, those don't appear because of a craving for drama. They appear because INTJs will prioritize what they view as truth and efficiency over reputation management. That has upsides. It signals to insiders that the mission takes precedence over optics. It also has a cost. It creates enemies, invites scrutiny, and can overshadow the work. An INTJ evolution moment comes when they realize that communication is also a system. It can be engineered to reduce unnecessary friction without diluting the message. You can keep the honesty and add context. You can keep the speed and add empathy. That's not selling out, that's increasing throughput. So is Elon Musk an INTJ? We can't type anyone with absolute certainty without a formal assessment, and personality is more nuanced than 4 letters. But if you analyze the observable patterns, long-range vision turned into stepwise roadmaps, relentless first principles problem-solving, introverted and minimal communication, lone wolf execution backed by a small circle of high-trust operators, future-oriented risk calculus, and a willingness to endure being misunderstood, the profile aligns strongly with INTJ. Whether you love him or hate him, the structure of his thinking looks like the INTJ blueprint. Why does this matter for you? If you recognize pieces of yourself in this breakdown, you can borrow the parts that work and blunt the edges that cut. Use your vision as a filter. Say no to anything that doesn't serve the end state you've defined. Apply first principles thinking to your career, your projects, even your health. What are the real constraints and what traditions can be dropped? Build systems that prevent you from fighting the same fire twice. When your bluntness starts burning bridges, add 2 sentences. Explain your why and acknowledge the human cost. Put realistic buffers on timelines, not because you're weak, but because reality is noisy and you want your plan to survive contact with it. And remember that alone is a tactic, not an identity. Even INTJs need a counsel, 2 or 3 peers with domain depth and permission to disagree, and a translator who can turn your clarity into language others can digest. There's one more reason this matters. We tend to mythologize people like Musk and imagine their success comes from superhuman talent. But most of what you saw today is a set of repeatable mental habits. You don't need billions of dollars to think from first principles. You don't need a rocket factory to design a system that saves you hours a week. You don't need to run a car company to practice long-termism in your finances. The toolkit is portable. Define the future honestly, Reduce problems to physics and logic. Design systems that remove waste. Speak with clarity. And cultivate a small circle of truth-tellers who keep you from crashing into your own certainty. If you can do that, you'll get the upside of the INTJ engine without some of the collateral damage. Elon Musk may be controversial, but his thinking style is instructive. If he is an INTJ, he's a vivid example of what happens when that rare personality type harnesses its gifts at full scale. Industries shift, timelines compress, and the possible expands. You don't have to agree with him to learn from the pattern. Start small. Your own production hell might be your morning routine or your creative workflow. Map it, fix the bottleneck, measure the throughput, and iterate. If you stick with it, you might look up one day and realize that the world you designed in your head is the one you're living in. So is Elon Musk an INTJ? The evidence leans yes. But the more interesting question is what you'll do with that model. If you feel like you're always one step ahead yet struggle to explain your vision, you might be walking the same path. Use it. Build the system. Share the why. And if this breakdown helped you see yourself more clearly, drop a comment with one INTJ habit you're going to try this week. Subscribe for more deep dives into personality and performance, and I'll see you in the next one.